How are you? Very
How are you,
botanical.
Panache?
Fine, eh?
Where are you based, Panache?
I'm based in Kariba.
Oh, in Kariba. Nice. And Prince N. Who's Prince N? What's your last name? Prince in the house. I'm trying to let me see. Facebook Live. Okay, yes. We're now live on Facebook. So how do I see the comments on Facebook? This is bad.
I think my network is just a bit shaky, but I should pick it up soon.
Ashton, hi. Can I see your face? I know you don't like me right now, but can I see your face, please?
Okay, so I think so. What's up? How are you?
Hi, it's good to see your face. I know you. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, my dear.
Perfect.
Sorry, I'm gonna need your help with the Facebook comments because I'm not sure how to see. I'm on, but I can't figure out how to see this.
It's okay. I've got you. Don't worry.
Thank you. Ashton, how are you doing?
I'm good. I enjoying life as always, you know.
Good for you.
Yeah, how are you?
It's Rebecca. Can we see your face as well, please?
Well, are people hiding?
Oh, sorry, it's the viewer. I'm not sure what.
We're just waiting for people to come in. So we'll give it a little bit. Do you guys hear the song? It's very topical. It's because the Sister Entertainment Committee. Hi, Molly. Titch. Twice in one day. Catherine. Yay. Representing 2000. Yay, Daitamari. Okay. Let's just give it a couple more minutes. Kudzi, hi.
I think you got some fans on your music there, Ru.
I have what? Sorry?
Some fans on your music. On the relevant music choices.
Relevant and appropriate. Thanks to Kudzi. We literally asked her 2 seconds before we started because we needed a money song, and she's like, right on point. Yay! Es Lolo. I love people's names. Sometimes you actually don't realize what your name is on these platforms. We'll get started just now, guys. Let's just give people another. Oh. Kudzi, what was the other song you told me? Simba Rashamungu is on the line. Hi, Simba. Song Bo. Clayton, thank you. I won't take credit for that. That's Kudzi who came up with that idea. It's Destiny. Okay, I think we should get started in the interest of time. We have a few people who've joined. Hi, everybody. Let me stop the music now. Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. Happy Saturday. I hope wherever you're joining. I think we have some people in Zim, some people in the US. I heard Kariba, Ndavandato Funga holiday, which maybe Kudzi, you can touch on holidays and how we should plan for those, because I'm ready to run a sister with FOMO and YOLO and always wanting to go on those holidays. So how do we plan for those? But welcome everyone. My name is Rungano Nyambuya. I am on the board of Education Matters Africa Foundation. And today we are very excited to relaunch the Generational Wealth series. I think it's a very critical topic that we started earlier this year. And for the rest of the summer/winter, depending on where you are in the world, we will be hosting sessions every Saturday at this time, bringing in different guests to share their knowledge and experiences around the topic. And today, I'm really excited because our first guest is Kudzi Mubaiwa. She will introduce herself later. But the topic of today's discussion is around just personal finance 101. So let's just start with the basics, right? Of what managing your money, what does that entail? And at the end of the day, we really want people to leave with some tangible tools to start your own journey. It's about learning from each other. So yes, Kudzi and I will talk about what we know and based on our experiences, and Kudzi is definitely more experienced because this is her life's passion, and she spends a lot of time around this, and I'll share my views as well. But we do want to hear from you. So throughout the conversation, please do share your questions through the chat, whether it's on Facebook or on Zoom, and we will address them as we go. Kudzi will start with a 10 to 15 minute presentation. Trust me, it will be very entertaining. Don't worry, it's because, we need to cover the basics of what is personal finance, and that is quite universal, right? So we need to start from there, and then we can go into a discussion after that where we want you to ask your questions, and we will answer them. And then the last, I do want to make a comment. Let's start with the sort of a disclaimer that first of all, it's to thank the Education Matters Africa Foundation for giving us this platform to learn from each other. And it really is what it is. It's in line with the mission of the organization. We really do want all of us to be learning from each other. At the same time, it's clear to also understand that we are not advocating for use of any businesses. It's the views that are discussed on here are personal views of the people who are participating in the discussions. They do not reflect the views of Education Matters Africa. We just want people to learn and exchange ideas and learn from each other. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Kudzi. Just a little bit of background of how Kudzi and I know each other. So takaenda kubonda, we went to Bonda together. We were in the same class. She was the smarter one, she was a prefect, you know, all of those things that are very impressive about people. And I did learn as we were preparing for this that Kudzi and I actually have a few things in common. She did say at some point that there are 3 things that are really important to her, and it is health, wealth, and happiness. And Kudzi, for me right now, health and wellness, promoting access to education, and empowering people around generational wealth are my 3 things right now. So we do have a few things in common, and I was excited when I saw that. So Kudzi, why don't I pass it over to you? Introduce yourselves, yourself, and then take us through what you have for us today.
All right, thank you very much, Ungano. I think the one thing she forgot to tell you is that she actually was a smarter one. I was just a class noise maker, and I now make noise for a living. Okay, so life. But indeed, we're going to have a really great time. Ungano, thank you for having me. And I want to just say also a big shout out to everybody who is in charge, who has allowed us to have this session. And because we only have an hour or inside an hour, I'm going to get right to it. So I'm going to share my screen so that I have 1 or 2 tools that will help me to move things along. And yeah, let's enjoy. So you can be asking questions while I talk through this throughout, and then we can be always able to sort of treat those things. Let's treat those things at the end. Okay, let's see if technology will agree with me here. And I hope you can see that. Please let me know if you can.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
All right, fabulous. Great. So I'm going to talk through the next 9 to 10 minutes on managing money. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am your facilitator. My name is Kudzi Mubaiwa is what I am most commonly known as Mubaiwa, but most of my socials I use Mubaiwa because that's easy for me to find great people I went to school like Ngano here. I am Chief Empowerment Officer of a managing company, a financial and digital literacy company called Investor Say in Private Limited. I also work a lot with young people in a hub called Eyes on Hub. But I'm here probably today wearing the hat of the host of my podcast, which is a business that I founded that has to do with just helping you make sound financial decisions. I'm also an author and blogger on personal finance. And then in terms of things I do around the world that have to do with money, I'm treasurer for AfriLabs, the local chapter of Zimbabwe's Internet Society, and also in the supervisory board of Global Innovation Gathering. Those are things you can probably find on the internet. Things you want to treat today. So I'm so glad that you're talking about making money at a generational level. Very, very, very important. And when we speak about money, what I know about money, and I must say this as we begin, is that the basics of money will not go away. I think Ru has already said this. It doesn't matter whether you're in Zim, in the US, in Asia, in Australia, whatever continent, country, space, province, district, ward, no matter what happens, the basics of managing money will not go away. I've heard people say, but I'm in Zim, it's a special place. The basics of managing money do not go away. That's number one. And I want to say that when we speak about, managing money, it's important for us to treat at least these 6 things. And I know when you go throughout the whole series, when I come through and other speakers, by the time you're done, you will see that you'll have covered planning money, which is what I'll sort of incline towards today. You will probably talk about making money, spending money, because there is a method to the madness. You don't just do it anyhow. It's important to talk about saving to invest. It's important to talk about dealing with debt. And then because we're in a digital age, it's also important to think about the digital tools. Now, though I may not deep dive on all of these 6 elements, but you will see that in the next 9 or so minutes, while I speak about planning, I will in a way touch on all of these things. So very, very important. So I know that we are online. We may not be able to have a chance to do this because of time, but I want you just to think about this as we begin. Who are you, all right? And then if you are not to a coin, I want you just to reflect on this. If you are not to a coin, what would you be? All right. And can you please do that in the chat? Can you quickly write for me in the chat? So I can already see your name, so don't write your name, but just tell me if you're a note or a coin, what or who would you be? So please be doing that while we are proceeding. Okay, so let's get into financial planning. I want to talk about financial planning as a start today. I can see that the chat is blazing, lovely. I will take a look at that somewhere towards the end. So financial planning is very, very important. What is financial planning? Basically, when you talk about financial planning, we're saying everyone needs to have a document that contains their current money situation and long-term monetary goals. So you need to know where you are, right? And you also need to know where you're going. At this point, it does not really matter where you're coming from. And I'm not saying this because bad money habits are good, but look, you've already spent the money, it's gone. So forgive yourself, and may today be the beginning of the rest of your life. So it's important that from today going forward, you have a plan concerning your money. And there are 3 plans that we want you to think about. Everyone at any stage or age should think about the short term. What is my plan for my money in the next 1 to 3 years, the medium term, the next 3 to 5, and the long term, which is 5 years plus. I will not dwell on this because I will share 2 at the end that you can use to sort of capture, all of these things. Now, I want us to start by thinking about this. There's something which is called net worth. If I were to ask you right now what your net worth is, and please, I do not mean that your value is reduced to money only. All of you are special. All of you have probably got gifts, abilities. You're all awesome, right? Someone out there loves you. At the minimum, your dog, okay? But when you speak of net worth, I'm talking now about from a money perspective, monetary terms. What is your net worth? So it's always important in life to defend a positive net worth. And net worth in its very simplest term is, what is it that I own? And so you could sit down and say, I have a car, I have a Mac, I have an iPhone, I have 5 pairs of stilettos, or I have whatever it is that you think has some kind of value, all right? You list all of those things and the value they have, that is what you own. And then from that, you want to subtract what you owe, all right? So you list, if it was in Zim, probably right, I owe $10 for 2 chickens from next door or something like that. I always joke and say in Zimbabwe, and nothing is borrowed as much as chicken, okay? And so if you owe anything at all, you then list the things that you owe. So the difference between the two, the difference between what you own and what you owe is what we call your net worth. And it's important that as you go throughout life, no matter how old or young you are now, you ensure that you always have a positive net worth. You always want to make sure that what you own is much, much more than what you owe. Now, this, of course, perhaps may have some people beginning to think about, is debt good or bad? That's a topic for another day, and I know you'll treat it as we go, but suffice to say that it is important to always defend having a positive net worth. This is why someone who perhaps owns things that total to say perhaps $5,000 and only owes $100 is probably at a net worth that is positive of 4,900. And that person may do better than someone who owns things that are worth 20 million and owes 50 million, if you see what I mean. So in your whole life, defend always having a positive net worth. Very, very important. Why is it important to have a financial plan? It helps you to control your financial situation. It helps you to have discipline in your finances, because if you plan your money, then you know exactly where your money is going to go to as soon as it comes into your hand. It also gives you, and this for me is the most important one, personal economic satisfaction, security, and just the ability to be stress-free. Now, lots of people who are walking around, and I see this in the streets of Harare, you almost run over people because someone is doing the math. They're probably calculating how much bread costs and how much milk costs and how much the soup may cost. They can't even see cars coming. You want to live lives where you sleep well at night. You want to feel secure. You want to feel satisfied. What helps you to do this? It is a personal financial plan. And I say this because many people who feel that they're not in a good place money-wise, it's really only because they do not plan their money. I'm sure most of us who are in this room have had situations where we spent a certain amount of money, no matter how big or small, and then later on you regret. You start feeling like, if I'd not just bought that thing, during lockdown, I could have been okay. And I've said at the beginning, forgive yourself. It's gone, guys. It's done. What is important is what you do going forward. And this is important, which is why we are treating this issue of a plan. So the next question, because I always like to treat the what, the how, or the what, the why, and the how. We've said what a plan is. We've said why it is important. And let me talk a little bit to the how, and then we will soon open up the discussion. Now, believe it or not, I'm halfway through the presentation. I always say that there are 4 pillars, and these are the things I want you to have as takeaways today. There are 4 pillars to your general personal finance. The first pillar is lifestyle. And I'm very deliberate in saying a decent lifestyle, because when I speak about this, most times people think that, personal finance educators like myself are here to force you to pinch pennies and scrounge and live lives like Scrooge. Okay, I don't believe in that myself. I feel that it is possible to live a very decent life, a lifestyle that you choose, and still be able to have what I call balance, all right? Have a bit of everything. And so I want to say that the good thing about life is that, there are always services and goods for every level of living. The critical thing that you must master is lifestyle. Live a life that you can afford, a life that is preferably below your means. Now, I know lots of people talk about living within your means. I make $100, so I live $100 life. Can I challenge you, or can I say it in the Zimbabwean way? Can I challenge you that if you make $100, live on 90 instead, live on 80 instead? And then I'll tell you why, because I want you to leave room to maneuver for other things. And so choose the lifestyle that you want. Where do you want to stay? What do you want to eat? What do you want to wear? If you have kids, for those of you that have them, where do you want to take them to school, or those that plan to have them? All of those things are lifestyle things that you must think about. The beauty about being in any country is that there is always something for every pocket. But let me also warn you very quickly, most people do not start by choosing the lifestyle. You start by generating a certain level of income. And so for most of us, our income will tell us where we should live. Now, I always say that in Zimbabwe, you could desire to live in Glenlone. But the truth is, for some people right now, your lifestyle can only let you live in Glenview or in Glenora. And it's a start. As long as there's a Glen somewhere, you will get there, all right? Because you live life in levels. So what is important is point number 1 under financial planning is that live a life that you can afford. Always below your means, never above your means. And what is the tool that will help you to do that? It is a budget. A budget is not a dirty word. A budget is simply a plan. It is a short-term plan that helps you to say, this is what I'm making, this is what I'm expecting each month. Can I use this to dictate the life I am able to live right now? And if you prefer a better lifestyle, you can make more money and be able to attain that lifestyle in your lifetime. So don't worry too much about catching up. I will share these notes exactly as they are, number 1. And then number 2, I will give you a tool at the end that can help you to do all of these things, because I know some people have never used a budget their whole lives, but we are here to help. The second thing I want you to understand about planning is this. You may be in control of your budget. You are living below your means. Your income is above your expenses, but there's something which is called emergencies that can derail you. Okay? And what do we mean? There are things that arise in life that we have not planned for: death, illness, accidents, fires, natural disasters. And right now, you and I are living in a pandemic. None of us saw this coming. None of us. I didn't, you didn't. And so now we must make provision for it. Let me tell you, people who've had a past 1 or 1.5 years, in the past 1.5 years when this COVID situation came up, people who had a soft landing are people who had made some kind of provision. When they fell ill, or when unfortunately there were deaths in their families, those people had a softer landing because they'd made a provision for those things. So even the person who is great as budgeting, who has chosen a lifestyle they can afford, can be derailed when one of these things come up. And so very important that we take care of these situations. Let's make provision with them. How do we do this? We do this mostly through insurance products. I will hear people say, yeah, but in Zim, those things don't cover. Guys, a little insurance is better than none. That I can tell you. It is better than none. It will help you to also make, you defend the lifestyle that you were living correctly when you make some kind of provision for emergencies. Let me move to the next 2 pillars, and then I will stop and we will get into the discussion. I want to say that pillar number 3 around financial planning, we said the first one is lifestyle, live a life you can afford. The second one is make provision for emergencies. I remember growing up when we used to go to school, so Rungano and I went to a rural high school, at least for O level, St. David's School for Girls, I prefer to call it, but some call it Bonda. And I know that when we used to get on buses to go to school, some of the Matongo buses had this large window. And if you've been in a Zuko lately, you'll see it's written on top, in case of emergency, kick out panel. When you speak of emergencies, they make provision such that if something happens in the bus, you can kick out that window and hopefully make your way out. Okay, so you do need a plan for emergencies. But let me also say pillar number 3 about financial planning is what I would call a retirement plan. I want us, everyone who is in this room, to appreciate that a day will come when we can no longer be as economically productive as we have been in the past years. The question is, how will you maintain that lifestyle we spoke about in pillar number 1? You need to have a plan. Okay, you need to have a plan. And so remember I said at the beginning that there are short-term plans, there are medium-term plans, there are long-term. So in the long term, you need to make sure you have a plan for retirement. Generally in financial education, we say that anyone who has hit the age of 25 must start having a plan. You know why? Because we assume that you have the next 40 years to be economically productive, and time will work in your favor if you start early. I have things I'm doing now which I regret not doing earlier, okay? And so very important that you think about retirement. I know it sounds crazy when you're still young, but the sooner you start, the better. And of course, like Rungano said at the beginning, we're not really promoting specific products or services, but let that thought pattern be in our minds, and perhaps when you open up for the discussion, those are some of the things we could deep dive into. Last but not least, and for me, this is a really important one. I want to say, because our real, our covering topic here is generational wealth. Now, I want to say that it is important that pillar number 4 comes into play. Make provision for those you care about. Some of you will marry. Some of you will have partners for life. Some of you may choose to have children. I want you to know that it is important to make life as soft as possible for people who come after you. Some of you have siblings you are taking care of, or just people you care about in life in general. You want to make sure that if your life was tough, okay, and things were not that easy for you, I always say, let the cycle of poverty end with you, all right? The example I always give is, imagine if your grandfather died years ago, and the only thing he left you, was a walking stick and a hat, right? And then your dad dies, and all he leaves you is chimbo yaya and that hat, and then perhaps 2 Kudzi boy. Or if you're very lucky, okay, 7. You want to make sure that you say to yourself, let the cycle of poverty end with me, and let the cycle of prosperity begin from me. So what are those 4 pillars? We want to make sure, number 1, we live a lifestyle we can afford. A budget will help us. Number 2, let's make provision for emergencies. Number 3, we want to make sure that we have a plan for retirement so that we take care of ourselves in the future. And then number 4, let's also kickstart as soon as possible, thinking about what kind of a legacy we will leave. And I want to say, in doing all of these things, I want you to always budget for joy, okay? Every month, every year, have a line that is for joy. So my mom taught me something growing up. She would say every payday, buy yourself something nice. If you can afford it, go to KFC, get a meal you want, enjoy it because you're working. It's important to do that, because if you don't, at some point you're going to blow up and say, but look, I'm working, and then do nonsense things. So holidays, nice things you like, as long as you put those things within a plan, absolutely no problem. So let me conclude by saying, here is a call to action as we begin our conversation today. I want to challenge you. Do you have a personal financial plan for the short term, for the medium term, for the long term? And if you do not, I want you to think about creating one. I'm shortly going to share into the chat. Once I kill my presentation, I will share a link to a simple Excel tool that I developed, which is on my blog, mari.co.zw. You can just download it, you can work on it, and you can develop a plan. On that, there is also a personal financial plan. There is a net worth sheet. There is a budget as well, template. Don't worry too much about who in there, but just, work around with it, play around with it, and it will help you to find yourself in terms of developing a plan. But here are some things to reflect on as we finish. What is it that you want to do in life? What are the things you want to have? What do you want to be? All of those things are going to require money. The next question is, how much do all of these things cost? And then finally, where will the money come from? So let this be a reflection as you begin to think about your life going forward. That tool will help you not only to answer those questions, but as you answer those questions, you put or reduce everything to specific numbers. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go into the chat. I'm going to go into the chat, and I've shared in there a template that you are able to use that will help you to develop a personal financial plan. So I'm going to stop here, and I want to thank everybody who, let me just see what people said in the chat. Okay, some say they want to be Benjamin, some say they want to be coins. I'm not sure what the motivations were, but perhaps we'll see as we speak whether we can talk to those things. So over to you, Ru. Let's get the discussion going. I don't know how you want to proceed from here.
Thank you, Kudzi. That was really good. And I want to do a shout out. We did ask a question in the chat of if you guys could let us know if you actually do have a personal financial plan, because this is really the starting point, right? And it's the call to action that Kudzi has raised. So shout out first one to Agnes Mutape Dube, who says she has one.
Awesome. Well done, Agnes.
Exactly. That is good. So I think, Kudzi, from here, there's a couple of questions that have been raised so far. So I'm just going to start with those. And I have some questions as well, just for us to dive deeper into the 4 things that you've raised, right? Because that's the starting point. The first question, I believe, was from Priscilla when you were talking about lifestyle. And it's a good question. Is there any guidance on how much below our means we should aim for?
So yes, different authors have different, so I've come across people who speak of the 70-30 rule, where they say, you know, of every $100, spend 70, and then the other 30 goes towards, you know, saving, investing, and good deeds. Some talk about, you know, the 50-30-20. There are lots of rules, but I think what is important is to find yourself. One of the things I found in the past 10 years doing personal finance work is that just like we're all different, if I were to ask us all to switch on our cameras, I'm not going to ask you to do that, but just from the faces you can see now, you can see that even twins don't look exactly the same. We are like that with money personalities. The rules that should work for us, though, are this. You cannot make or create wealth in life if you consume everything you make. And so the general idea is this: you want to make sure that for every portion of money that you get, right, there is a portion that you are spending for day-to-day living, and then there's always, very, very important, a portion that you save. On this, most people agree that it should be a minimum of 10% of your income, right? And I think that's a really great start. If you teach yourself or school yourself to always take away $1 from every 10 bucks, and set it aside. And I know people in Zimu immediately say inflation. That is why I said at the beginning, it's not actually just saving, it's saving with the deliberate intention to invest. So the saving element is taking it away from money that you have made, and then immediately you want to find a home for it where obviously inflation will not kill it or corrupt it. And so I want to say that you can then find the formula that works for you, because there are different authors, different proposals. But I believe that it's always important to have a portion that you put away for saving, to invest. Personally, 80-20 works very well for me. I always make sure that 20% of my income I am putting in a place that it can take care of me in the future, and then 80% I am able to live on.
And Kudzi, speaking of places where you're putting the 20%, what are some of those places?
Okay, great. So yeah, I didn't say at the beginning that my background is actually banking. So I was an investment banker for about 10 years before I then started my consulting company. And so I'm very well versed with pretty much all of the investment products. Now, there are 4 key places, or what you call 4 key asset classes that people can put their money in, right? So generally, the whole world agrees around this. The first one is property. That's very obvious, land and buildings. Look, if you save $100 from a $1,000 salary, you can't immediately go and buy land. We all agree, okay? But in the long run, when your money is bigger, you can participate. But also, it's important to understand that there is also what you call fixed income investments. And this is basically where you put your money within a financial institution and they give you a certain level of interest on it, right? Now, this might not really work very well in a hyperinflationary environment like Zim, but for people who are perhaps in South Africa or in the United States, the idea is just to put the money in a place where you can get high interest, and that interest must beat inflation. So that's the second asset class, what we call, fixed income investments, all right? But also amongst these capital markets is what we call the stock exchange. And those of you that are on Twitter may know that I'm a very huge fan. I always am saying on Twitter, Edzaima shares. That has been our mantra for the past, almost 1 year. And I want to say that the stock market is another place where you can then train yourself. And this works beautifully, even for people who are in Zimbabwe, because there are minimums of even 500 Zimbabwe dollars every month. If you set that aside, you can actually do something. And so the stock market is a place that I like because anyone is able to put their money into other businesses, right? What you're basically buying is a portion of a business that other people have started. Not all of us are meant to be entrepreneurs, okay? And so for those of us that are doing well in their jobs, from the money that you make, you can then set aside something every month consistently, which you put into stocks. And this is true for the ZSE, for the JSE, for the New York Stock Exchange, whatever country you're in. Most countries do have a stock exchange. It's a really great practice, especially if you're young, because in the long run, this is a proven fact. In the long run, the stock market will always outperform every other market, and it will always beat inflation. And then the last one, which is very interesting, is that you can put your money in what you call alternative investments. And there's a plethora of these. Now, in Zimbabwe, for example, there's what we call biological assets, basically kutenga mombe, and Kudzi and stuff like that. Or alternatively, there's also, what you call investment clubs on Pawanita Marim Round, and then they lend out that money to other people. There's also people who put their money in commodities. In more developed countries, people put money in things like art, like wine. It's a mix. So alternatives are lots of things. There's even cryptocurrency thrown into the mix. So I want to say that there's always a home for money. And in every territory that every person in this place is housed, there are personal financial advisors. Those guys will be able to show you or help you to deep dive into the spaces you can put your money in. But suffice to say, I want to say that it does help if you deliberately research and ask questions in the territory that you are in, and then make it a practice, because the key with saving and investing is not the amount of money, it is consistency. So the person who is continually saving $100 or even $20 every month, US, right, for the next 40 years will be better off than the person who is now they start 10 years later, they forget, and then they start trying to start again. So yes, a home can be found for every bit of money, depending on the area that you are living in.
Thanks, Kudzi. And on that, and speaking of lessons learned, I think for me, one of the things that, growing up when I was a student and I thought I have really no money, I wish I had done was, I wish I had started one saving earlier, even if it was $5 out of the $100 paycheck that I got every 2 weeks when I was in college. I also wish I had started investing $5, and maybe at that time we didn't have a lot of those tools, but I wish I had started investing at that time, because there's the power of learning how to invest when you're still young. And even though you are investing $5 and it's not what's going to make you the wealthy person at that time, the wealth that comes is in the knowledge and in the learning with that $5 over time, so that when you now have the big bucks, you know where to be placing your money. So I think for the students that are on here, it's even on that paycheck that you think it's so tight, please make an allocation for that so that you can start learning sooner rather than later. Kudzi, you spoke about emergency provisions. How much should people be saving for emergencies?
So again, there are different schools of thought around this. Personally, when I spoke about my 80%, that is because I do make sure about 5% of my income is put towards emergencies. But I also find that it's much, much easier to make use of products, right? Why? Because what you then get is leverage. For very little money, you have the assurance that someone else will pick up the bill if perhaps you were to die or you were to fall ill or something of that nature. So while I may want to say 5% works for me, the question is 5% of what? I think what is more important is for people to think around, do I have some form of medical cover? Do I have some form of funeral assurance? Do I have some form of, anything that you believe could be a potential emergency? So if you've got high value items, then you would insure them. So, in the case of a fire, you want to make sure that if you've got a Mac, insure it. But if you've got an ASUS, I don't know. No, I'm kidding. I'm just saying, if there's anything that has value in your life, if the cost of replacing it is so high that it would be beyond you to do it, should something happen, then just make sure you make use of insurance. What I find with most people is they fear insurance from afar. People have this thought pattern that it costs so much. And the trick is just to go to several providers and ask. You'll be very surprised, and this is true for every territory, what can be done according to your budget. So like I said at the beginning, the beauty with money things is that there's always something for every pocket. If I were to speak about Zim, which I perhaps could say in a way I'm an expert in, if I choose to get medical aid, there's actually medical aid for every pocket. Now, granted, you may not really get the kind of cover you want. It may not be a private hospital cover, but I'll tell you this, even if you're well and you do not have any terminal illness, if something were to happen to you, like for example, you're in an accident, to use my mother's words, because my mother comes from Manika land, so you want to make sure that there's some form of cover. So I always say to people that any little cover is better than nothing. At the same time, there's got to be a balance. Don't overinvest. So for example, in Zim, I know that private hospital insurance could cost you as much as, for an individual, $150 per month. Now that's too much money, if there's just if you perhaps have making, twice that much in terms of a salary, and you don't have to go that route. There are places you can be paying something as little as $10 or $20 or $15 even. What is important is to have the cover. So for me, what is important is to say on those notes, just tick off these things. Do I have a cover for illness? Do I have a cover for death? Do I have a cover for the things that are important to me in case they are in a fire? And like you said, Drungan, I think this is a very important point we should not sleep on. You did say this about saving. The skills you acquire when you start early, guys, are priceless. Someone asked me on Twitter, how come you choose stocks that win? I don't read a lot, but remember, I spent 10 years plus in investment markets. So I have what I call muscle memory. I can pick just by seeing a stock that I think this one will go up because I remember things about it. So those skills are very important. When you're still young, just that propensity to save, right? Because it's a discipline. You see, the thing is, saving is based on what we call, there's a nice English word for it, delayed gratification. So if you teach yourself that early, because generally what people do with money when it's small is exactly what they do. So don't think your problems will be solved when you get $100. If you can't manage $10, guys, you won't make it with 100. You won't. Take the skills from the 10, apply them to the 100.
And I have a question for the audience here, which we want to hear from you. What are you specifically using as tools to save your money from an emergency funds perspective, wherever you are, whether it's in the US and Zim, anywhere in the world? What are some of the tools that you're using? If you can just share that in the chat, because again, guys, Kudzi and I have our experiences, but we do want, it's about all of us learning from each other. So we want to hear from you as well. Hloni Pani, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, has a question. Kudzi, is there a difference between living below your means and increasing your means in terms of mindset or approach? You're on mute.
I did not unmute myself, yes. That was the statement of the year 2020. You're on mute.
Exactly.
Just like it's going to be popular 21 as well. Yeah. So there's a bit of background noise where I was, so I just needed to make sure that someone had passed. Now, I do think there is a difference. I think two things matter, and thank you for asking that question because it's very important. When we look at a plan, like the day-to-day or month-to-month plan, which is a budget, it has two things, your income and your expenses, right? Now, the ideal thing we are looking for is balance. We want to make sure that we match at the very least. But I did say I personally prefer that you use less than you actually make. So if you have $100, perhaps live on 80. And then the reason I say that is because I want you to create what I call fiscal space in the 20 that you can use to make money. So the trick with money, or what we call investing, is this. From the money you make, however little you think it is, make that money make more money for you. Right? And lots of people say, yeah, when I've done paying everything, I don't have any money to save and whatnot. The mathematics is simple. Before you actually spend on anything else, always take out that which you intend to invest and then put it in a place where it begins to grow. Like it's not even counted on at all. So for me, I feel that there's a difference between living within your means and then increasing your means. I think you must have a base lifestyle that is according to the means that you have, right? And then you must also have a thought pattern that says, I aspire for better things in the future. So I personally am continuously looking for ways to make more money from the base money that I make. Like, I'm self-employed, I do consulting work. So I have a certain level of income. Now, unlike most people, I don't have money that comes in a specific way every month. I could make a big truckload of money the first 3 months of the year, and then it's quiet for the next 3, and then the next 6 months, and then it's quiet for another 3. And so for people like me, especially, we actually have then to learn to navigate. And I think this is very important. But people who have a consistent income probably have it easier. The bottom line, though, is this. If I decide that my lifestyle will fit within 1,000 United States dollars per month, even if I make 20,000 that year, I'll still live on 12. I will take the 8. I will put it in places that will make more money for me. And so for me, there's the issue of living within means, in the sense of what I agree with myself is what I feel I should spend, what is my present lifestyle. But I use any extra money to actually make me more money, so that I can in the future be able to increase my lifestyle, perhaps to a 1.5 or a $2,000 per month type of lifestyle. But that said, I want to conclude by saying this, and this is why I was saying this is an important question. If you can do both things, then you are in the sweet spot. Because lots of people are able to try and manage around, okay, I have this income, let me try and live below the means. But guys, there is a point which you can't keep cutting things. You know, you still need money for certain things. So it's also very important. I said at the beginning that it's a topic I won't deep dive into today, but it's also very, very, very important to continually look for ways of increasing income. And just to give you this as homework, one of the things you should read is a book by a man called Robert Kiyosaki. He's American. Lots of people have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's not for me the best book he's written. For me, the best book he's written is Cash Flow Quadrant, where he narrows down to those 4 pillars around generating income. He speaks about 4 things. You make money from employment, you make money from self-employment, you make money from business, you make money from investing. And there is no rule that says you do one at a time. There isn't. You may progress from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, but for me, the ideal is to have as many sources of income as possible. And like I said at the beginning, managing money is always more important than making it. So when I've made the money, my lifestyle is what will help me to manage the money, but I'll also continue to pursue making more money. And it's a continuous circle. So you manage it well, you make more, you increase your lifestyle, you continue to manage, always living within our means at whatever level.
Thank you. And actually the book, I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I actually didn't know about the cash flow quadrant. I do recommend that people do read his books. I think it's just, as a start, it's a great place to start in terms of learning about these things. Now, looking at our chat, I loved the responses to the question of where are people placing their money for savings and emergency funds? My best response, well, the one that I really thought was interesting from my perspective, is livestock. Because, you know, we don't really, I mean, I think everybody has stocks, ETF, mutual funds, medical aid, life cover, which is all great. Rumbi is all about livestock. And in Rumbi, I have 4 cows and 3 goats in my father's farm. And that's how it starts, guys.
Yes, I have a song for you, Rumbi. And it looks like Rumbi is a lady, which I really love, right? So for her, the cows don't start coming home when, you know. So Rumbi, shout out to you. Mombe mbiri nema dongi mash. Or is it Mombe ina? Lembu zitatu sevenza nawe chawe. Well done.
Oh yeah.
That's all I want to say.
Oh dear. And Munasha Mugonda, I'm going to do a shout out to her as well, because she has a savings and credit cooperative institution. And Munasha, I think at some point you can tell people about the work that you're doing with Rujoa, but that's another avenue that's probably out there for people to explore and look into. And what are thoughts from people around? I remember in college with my Zim friends, we had a nice Zim community there. We used to do Jema, what is it called? Where you, every month somebody's getting rounds. Thank you, that's the word. Rounds. Because I think, you know, it's, what are people's views on Jema rounds?
Yeah, I think while they're coming through, I can hop in as well. Yes, I did briefly talk to that as a way of saving. It works very well. In fact, across Africa, and I do a lot of work across, I think I've been to maybe 20 or so African countries. it's amazing that Marounds are everywhere. Like they're everywhere, guys. Like this, they're like a pandemic by themselves, a good one. And so I want to say that the trick with Maround is always to make sure that it is with people you know and trust, number one. Number two, and this is really critical, it must be people who have similar objectives. So get around them, take my laptop, or around them, take my phone, or around them, take a mombe or something, you know, livestock, each a goat or something like that. Then that's really great if you have the same objectives. They only fail when people are people who do not know each other or people who do not have the same sort of investment objectives, but those work very well. The trick now, the fashion, and it's actually interesting that financial services companies across Africa have now started to make provision for those. I know there are several in Zim where, to make it easy for you to collect from each other, you know, you all send it to the institution and then they have a mechanism of sending to whoever is receiving it, which is great, okay, if it's Zim dollar, but perhaps for other currencies, it might be easier just to move the actual physical money. So I highly encourage them. My only additional thought around that is to say, don't make the money be dead money, irungo kandwa. You know, if possible, and I've seen lots of women's savings group do this in Zim, put the money somewhere where it can actually then gain interest for all of you. And then at the end of the year, you have much, much more. But the principle itself, even if there is no interest, is great because it still goes back to delayed gratification. This is money I have, I could have spent it, but I choose not to. And Rungwana, I want to say while we are here, before we go to the audience, that anyone who has ever eaten a meal, especially Zimbabweans, of sadza, you know, beef stew and vegetables knows how to save. Because the right way to eat it is you eat your sadza, vegetable soup, and if there are 2 pieces of meat, you conclude on a high note with the meat. What is it that sends you to eat the meat last? We call that delayed gratification. So I don't hear anybody say, yeah, I can't save. You can save. If you're able to save 2 pieces of meat, you know what to do. So the vibe is already correct. Just build on it with your money. Let's hear from the audience then.
Okay, I hear Hlonipani talks about, can we consider and work with investment clubs instead of grocery clubs? One of the topics in the series that we're going to be talking about, Hlonipani, is going to touch on my investment clubs, especially around alternative investments. We have a topic. One of the sessions is actually going to cover alternative investments, and that's where we sort of find investment clubs coming into play, especially these days. And the folks that we have coming to participate in that session have done this, and it'll be, I think that's one you should certainly participate in. Kudzi, you spoke about Nyaye Joy, and I think this is really important, right? And saving.
I knew that was coming.
Because, yes, because I struggle with this, but I now have a tool that I've been using, which we can talk about, but I want to hear from you. How do we incorporate that into our lives and in the budgeting process, right? So speak from your experience, what do you recommend people do around incorporating that specifically? Like what tools to use to do that?
Okay, so for me, I feel like the budget is the all-sufficient one. You can treat everything on a simple Excel budget. I've already shared into into the chat a link to a simple one you can start with. Maybe some of you may find much easier tools. I think the principle for me is what is most important. Guys, it's not realistic to live life and then just be buying reasonable things. Every month you're buying safe and green bars and sugar and all that stuff, and not a single thing. Buy yourself a chocolate, guys. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. The only problem comes when you spend all of the money on chocolates and not green bars. There's also a problem, in my view, if you only buy Soro and never, make provision for things you like to do. So every month, do something you like to do, but every year as well, whether it's your holiday or it's a particular high ticket good purchase, there are several ways around doing it. For me, I always say to people that I don't spend a lot of money on a lot of things. I don't really follow fashion. I just like classic stuff in terms of clothing. But the thing that gives me joy is travel. So I budget for joy. What do? I make sure that if I want to travel, I know exactly when I want to travel. I start to save the money in time. I start to pay for things in advance. So sometimes it's not about saving the actual cash. It is finding great deals. It is then making sure that you pay for the things that you need to pay for while there is time. And so this works for all sorts of different things. I know people who like clothing and say they want to budget for joy for clothes. Then make sure that they, wait for sales. So, don't buy winter clothes in summer and vice versa. And so those are simple hacks that we can then use in life so that we make sure we incorporate the things that give us joy.
Thanks, Kudzi. And what I'll just add on that is something that I've been using over the last few years that's working for me personally is the power of automation, especially now in a digital world where with our financial institutions, you can pretty much, if you're working, whether it's you're still a student or you're a professional, the power of automation and setting up direct deposit for things in, you know, that you care about. So I personally literally have a spreadsheet. I'm old school. I think now there's tools like Mint and other, I don't even know, that there's probably a lot more. But I have a spreadsheet, guys, that I've had for the last 10, 12 years. And it changes over time. But in that spreadsheet, I save for my holidays. I allocate money for my holidays throughout the year. I live in New York City, and you have to pay dorm tips at the end of the year, and it can be quite expensive. So from the beginning of the year, I start putting $10 a month towards that, and I've created a separate savings account for that. I save for my philanthropy, so giving is important to me personally. So again, every month, there's money that just goes into it that is, you know, so that when somebody comes to me and they're fundraising for something and it's a cause that I care about, I have money already that's set aside for that I can tap into. What else? So I think that the power of just have the plan of this year, these are the things that I want to allocate my money towards, and then start saving for those things so that when the time comes, you're not doing this huge cash outlay from your income from that month.
Absolutely.
It's like money that's been there already. And I think with that, Rebecca asked a question, Kudzi, where is the role of philanthropy giving in one's financial plan? Could it be considered one of the pillars?
Yes, so that is definitely under legacy. Remember that we said our financial plan must talk to our lifestyle, it must talk to our emergencies, it must talk to retirement. And for me, legacy is not just giving to, I think I did, perhaps I missed that bit, but I'm sure in my text I did say to give to people or to causes that you care about, because I feel that that's a very important part of our lives. We cannot live a life that is meaningful by just accumulating. It's important to give, and this differs. Some people would like to give to the SPCA, some will give to things that have to do with children, some will give whichever way. That's very, very important. And I think having that as one of the pillars is us being intentional. And that's building on what you also said, Rungano, where you're saying you automate, you are intentional. And I highly, highly, highly encourage also the idea of automating. In some respects, in Zim, you can also do that, especially for investments, for things like unit trust, you can automate. And I highly encourage that, because most times, like we said, most people will run out of money if they've got a budget because they start with expenses. But if we have the things that we care about, and the money is already pre-removed, then whatever is remaining is what we then live on. So yes, intentionality for me is everything. And certainly the role of giving for me is not a small one. It's certainly something that appears on my budget, and I highly encourage to all of us. We are what we are because a lot of people gave. So we must, in the same way, give.
Okay. So as we start to wrap up, guys, I want to put 2 last questions into the chat. One is, can you please share your favorite literature or your favorite source of information about as you've been on your own personal finance journey? Because again, we're all about sharing, right? And then the second question is, I lost my train of thought. Oh, what's your number 1 personal finance tip that you want to give to everybody else on this chat today? So please, can you type those into the chat, and then we'll share them with everybody. And while you guys are typing, Nyasha Zimunu has a question for you, Kudzi. I have a question for Kudzi about investing versus entrepreneurship. It's possible to get really sizable returns from investing in the stock market or in other people's businesses? And once you have the muscle memory you were talking about, you could be making returns without working so hard. As hard as you would have to work as an entrepreneur. So knowing that and having the skills you have as an investor, what has been your own motivation to pursue entrepreneurship? Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question and I love it. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. I think for me, the motivation has been one, because my background allowed me to build or work with businesses and finance them. When I was in corporate finance, I was always excited to see what people could do. But I felt a stirring in the inside of me. I think every entrepreneur feels a challenge in them to build something people like. And it's all fun and games and interesting to make money while you put money into other people's businesses. But sometimes God gives us ideas and you want to pursue those and see how far those things would grow. So I'll come back to what I said about the cash flow quadrant. I think life is boring when you make money in one way. So I always want to make sure that I'm making money from as many ways as possible. I enjoy putting money into investments because in a way, I want to say that for me, I find that is easier. I don't sweat, I don't do any work, but I still find a thrill from building things and providing solutions to problems, which is what I believe most entrepreneurs are out to do. You know, they don't really initially seek the money. You want to provide solutions to specific problems. And then, of course, you make money along the way, because at the end of the day, business, really, the bottom line is about making money. So what I like is to be ambidextrous, do more than one thing at a time. And I also highly appreciate that not everybody's cut out to do this. I've always said, I don't agree with people who say we must all be entrepreneurs. No, we must not. We will work for the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need high-performing people like some of you guys to be their CEOs, to be their FDs. And I would choose any day to be CEO of a large company like in Zimbabwe, Econet, than to be the owner of a small struggling flower business, for example, from a bottom line perspective. So we all matter, right? But my internal motivation is because I continue to have ideas. I like to pursue them. I like to provide solutions. I enjoy creating employment. It's as simple as that. But from the money I make from my entrepreneurial activities, I try and invest. And also from the money I make from investments, I then have the leverage to pursue certain ideas without burning other people in the process. So that's, for me, is my motivation.
Wonderful, wonderful. And in terms of what are other people using here? Dave Ramsey, a book that's recommended, The Richest Man of Babylon.
Great one, guys. Yeah.
Munashe talks about Sakos, which is her Rujoa, which Munashe, we can pick that one up. I personally use Elevest and Clever Girl Finance. I started following Kudzi once I learned that she does things around money. And for me, especially, I like looking at things in the US. That's where I'm based, but then also in Zim, because for me, huge part of my family is in Zim. So I want to learn about what's going on in Zim and empower my family as well to be aware of some of these things. Favorite book from Education Matters. Agnes Mutape Dube on Facebook said it was, the Susie Orman book, Women and Money. Evelyn Gatawa wants to get in touch with you, Kudzi. I'm just putting it out there. Rebecca says her favorite site is Clever Girl Finance. They do have a lot of resources, podcasts. So, and then Kudzi's website is www.mari.co.zw. By the way, I just thought it was funny that like no one had taken that website. It's that.
Yeah, I found it funny as well. Not complaining.
It's available. Guys, I think we're wrapping up. Any other questions before we start to close out here and have Kudzi give us her closing remarks? And I think, Kudzi, I'd love for you to focus on what's the call to action. You shared a template.
Absolutely.
Where's the resources? How can people get in touch with you?
Okay, so yes, I have shared into the chat a link to our podcast. It's already been spoken of. You can also find it on Google Podcasts, Mari Podcast. And I also did share a link to our Telegram group where if you have questions, you can also ask around some of the stuff that you have great resources on our Mari Podcast blogs, podcasts on cryptocurrency, on JSE, on the ZSE, stocks. I think we've covered pretty much everything. So go there, read them, listen to them, and then be a part of what we're doing. I think, Rungano, you're free to share my number into the group or whatever way is easiest for you guys. And if you just say, look, I was at this Education Matters, Ed Matters meetup, then we can start the conversation from there and I can share some useful resources as well. So I want to say thank you very much for listening. I will reiterate that the call to action is that all of you must go out and make a plan. If we're in a physical class, I would have asked you to look your neighbor right in the eye and ask them, do you have a plan? So here is a great takeaway. We are about to finish this first half of the year. As we get into the second half, I'm going to say this for the last time. Forgive yourself for all of your money nonsense before this. Let the first day of the rest of your life, money-wise, be from the 1st of July. Remember that date, 1 July 2021. By that date, between now and then, fill up that plan that I've sent. Sit down with yourself, talk to yourself, and have a plan. The people who do well in life, they make a plan, they plan their work rather, and then they go out and work their plan. We cannot run away from the need to plan. When it comes to money, managing money is more important than making. If you make lots of money but have no plan for it, you keep going in circles. So make sure you take out that tool. It sounds like a boring thing to do, but like I'm going to say, it's over time. In personal life, things from as way back as 10, 15 years ago, you continue to refine it. You will see that you will make meaningful progress. Last thing is that it's very possible for all of us here, especially because you're young, to leverage time. Most things that have to do with money, the earlier you start, the better. So we are living in a very powerful time with the opportunity of the internet. There's never been more resources than we have. The world is not going to move any slower. It's only going to move fast. But there's so many opportunities in this digital age that you can take advantage of. So please go ahead and start. Get started, and please go out and make money. And I always say, this is the last thing I always say, it will end not in tears, but it will end in wealth. Thank you very much, and cheers.
Kudzi, you are absolutely amazing. And to everybody that's been participating, guys, thank you so, so much. I love the energy, your participation in the chat. Let's keep the conversation does not end today. It's going to continue. Next weekend, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to use the words black tax. I think this is a topic that is very sensitive, sometimes could be controversial, but we're in a place of building and constructiveness. So we have a lineup of 4 individuals that are very, very interesting, will be sharing their personal journeys around it. And we do want you to come with your questions. After that, the rest of the topics we're covering are around real estate and investing in Zimbabwe, because I know people are very interested in that. Investing in the stock market, whether it's in Africa and Zimbabwe or in some of the developed markets. Retirement and estate planning. We want you to, for those who have kids, tips on how to start planning for your children's future, alternative investments, and then we'll probably close off the series with a fireside chat, learning from our parents who've been on the journey and, you know, sharing some of the tips that they've acquired along the way. If there's anything else that you guys would like to learn about, please do reach out to myself or anyone else from the Education Matters team so that we can plan for that. But let's keep the conversation going and keep those questions coming and exchanging the knowledge and ideas. Kudzi, you've been great as always. Thanks so much. And thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, guys.
It was an honor. Cheers.
And we finish it off with the song that we started, if I can find it now, which may gonna take me.
I found connected.
Stay previously. ATM card on the bottom of I call it long story. Like a pina moving, I find out it's different. So buy up on the MoneyZim. Home with Zinonyara, cause Dinema Humunya. My time.